And we are live. Welcome to Practically Tactical. This is our show dedicated to sharing with you, we'll say, one of the most highly anticipated instructors I've had on the show in quite some time. We have Aaron Cowan of Sage Dynamics on the show today. This is our live show streaming to you guys, but you guys know how it works. You can catch all these on iTunes in a podcast format. New episodes drop every Sunday at noon Central Standard Time. So I talked about is we have Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. Thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really good to be here.
So for those that aren't familiar with Sage Dynamics, by far go look them up. You're based out of Atlanta, Georgia, correct?
Yes.
And obviously you're a firearms instruction. You have website, you have Instagram, you're a writer, blogger. Take a couple minutes and tell everybody where they can find you at online.
Well, there's the Facebook /Sage Dynamics. Website is sagedynamics.org. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Sage Dynamics. I write for Recoil Magazine and Recoil Web, breechblingclear.com, Monderno.com, modernarms.com. I think that's everything. And then I also do a blog, which is through the Sage Dynamics website. If you want to see me at my most salty and raw, that is the best place to go.
I would say you're probably definitely most known for being straightforward and honest with no fluff. Is that right?
I was talking to somebody else about this recently. Instead of saying I call a spade, I tend to just do it and let people kind of get that impression. I think it works out a lot better. There's no reason to sugarcoat things that don't need to be sugarcoated. So I've always been pretty straightforward about as much as possible. I'm not a big fan of political correctness. I think that's benefited me more than it's hurt me. So.
Well, I agree, especially when it comes to, we'll say, involving things that can take a life. I think straightforward and honesty is the best way to go. And that's why, obviously, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. And we should mention as well, you can catch you on OpCom pretty much every single Wednesday on OpCom. So High Capacity TV here on YouTube, you guys check it out. But we'll start moving on here. Be sure to put your questions in the YouTube chat or the Google Q&A app if you're watching on there, and we will answer some questions from the live audience segment. And be sure to click that like and share button on the videos. It really helps us spread the word about the show on YouTube. So let's move on to the show. Welcome to Practically Tactical, episode 51, brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. The Practically Tactical Show features a roundtable discussion about guns, gear, and shooting with some of the best firearms instructors and figures in the firearms industry. For more information on the show, links to our guests, guns, and gear we discuss, please visit practacpodcast.com/051. I can tell you we're going to have an awesome show tonight. We'll be talking about force-on-force training with Aaron Cowan of Sage Dynamics. Hey, Aaron, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, man, it's really great to be here.
No, I appreciate you coming on because I think right now in the firearms industry, the hot topics are what? Temple indexing, making everything gold, and
gotta have that TIN coding.
Yeah, and force-on-force training. Are those pretty much like and muzzle brakes, of course, and muzzle brakes.
Well, the thing about the force-on-force is it kind of ebbs and flows. Everything eventually revolves back around, or evolves, or devolves, or comes back around, however you want to say it, to gear-centric topics. We want to talk gear, because it's very tangible. We can put our hands on it. We can play with it. Everybody can own it, provided they make the investment. Whereas training is sometimes considered a little more esoteric. It's like, hey, I want to take this class, or I have taken this class, or I just talk about going to classes, but I never actually do it.
I'm sure there's quite a few people out there, probably myself included, that fall into some of that sometimes. Probably nobody can probably ever take enough training. I'm sure as a firearms instructor you could probably vouch for that as well.
True story. I am an instructor, but I'm always going to be a student. I take as much training as possible. But I know that, depending on your available time, family commitments, things like that, you can't always get out there and train, more than maybe once or twice a year. So all hopes is us firearms instructors, it's our job to make sure that when you are able to take a class, we give you the best training possible for the time that you're willing to give us.
That is an excellent point. That's something I think I want to head on here later is it more important of who is teaching the class as to what you're learning? I think that's something that kind of you hit on there. I'm definitely going to hit on later here.
Okay.
But we'll get into our main statement here in a second. But for those that maybe aren't familiar with yourself, Sage Dynamics, where should people go to find out more information on your training company, and more information about what you guys teach, classes, location, everything along those lines on the internet?
You can go to sagedynamics.org. In the training section, there's brief descriptions of all the courses. Some courses there's on the Sage Dynamics YouTube channel, which is YouTube.com/Sage Dynamics, I believe. You can find videos of some of the classes. Not all the classes have videos, some of them do. But you can also watch all the other videos and get a kind of an idea of not only what I teach, but how I teach. I don't believe video is training. It's a training supplement, so I kind of approach it that way. It's a practice supplement. I believe that there's a distinct difference between training and practice. But I guess that would kind of be a conversation for maybe later on or another show. And then I write as many training-focused articles as possible. I try to be as informative as possible. Some things are going to be technique-related, and some things are going to be information-related.
Well, they also need to go find out on Facebook because you shared a fantastic article today that was because everybody hears that saying of slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Oh my God, yeah, that one.
That was a fantastic article, and I've caught myself saying that a bunch of times. And when you look at it, that means you're saying slow is fast, and that's not it, especially in competition shooting.
It's funny because that saying actually got me kicked off a range once. I was taking a class. I won't mention the name of the instructor because he's no longer with us and he can't defend himself. But he basically opened the class with that statement, and I was kind of down in the end, and I raised my hand, and I was like, "So you mean to tell me that slow equals fast?" And he's like, "Well, slow is smooth." And I'm like, "No, I'm tracking on that." And he's like, "Smooth is fast." I was like, "Yeah, Roger, but basically what you're saying is smooth and fast, they only have, like, slow and fast have smooth in the middle, so they're the same thing. That's impossible. That doesn't even track with, like, logic." And I got kicked off the range because he didn't like dissension from his students, which I can totally respect, provided that dissension is not common sense. If someone has a general an actual legitimate question as to what they're being taught, they should have every right to challenge the instructor, respectfully.
Yeah.
He didn't see things that way, so I basically got kicked off the range. But no, that's a topic I've never subscribed to. I don't believe that slow equals fast. I think it's a ridiculous idea. Basically, what the saying is trying, the full saying, depending on who you heard it from, is slow is smooth, smooth is steady, steady is fast. I've heard it that way, but it's been kind of bastardized into slow equals smooth, smooth equals fast. Slow is slow. Smooth can be slow. Smooth can be fast. It's basically how much correct repetition you're willing to put into a motor skill to develop the speed. And that statement kind of leaves that out.
Well, and hearing this whole kind of small dissertation, you guys know why that I should have had on Aaron a long time ago, and I can tell you from all the instructors that I've had on, I've said nothing but the best about Aaron here. And this is why, because he's straightforward and honest and has thoughts between anything he speaks. So that's why he's just an awesome guy. And again, you guys catch him on OPCOM, High Capacity TV, pretty much every Wednesday. And check out his YouTube channel and all the places he writes. He's a busy guy. So let's move on here. So let's talk about pre-Sage Dynamics. What's your history? When you were born, were you saying, "Hey, I'm going to grow up to be a firearms instructor and move to the dirty South"? What transcribed before Sage Dynamics?
I was always, I come from a hunting family, from a very pro-military, pro-law enforcement family, a lot of vets, a lot of cops. So guns were definitely not terra incognita for me. I was familiar with them. I had my first gun when I was 7. I always wanted to join the military, but being, an adolescent into a teenager, I really had no idea what the military did other than what I'd seen in movies and maybe the occasional soldier that I knew or a family member. So I decided to join the Marine Corps. I went into the recruiter station, and the Marine Corps recruiter was out to lunch. And the Navy recruiter was sitting there in the office because they shared the same office. Because the Marines is they're under the Navy, Department of the Navy. I don't want to say under the Navy because I might hurt somebody's feelings. But the Marine recruiter wasn't there. The Navy guy was, and the Navy guy looks up and he's like, "Can I help you?" I was like, "No, there's nothing you can do." So I went down the hall and joined the Army, and it really was that simple. I spent 3 years active duty with the Army infantry. And then I finished out the rest of my MSO as a National Guard member. So 1999, 2006, I was serving our country in the Army. During that time, after I left active duty, I went into private contracting, did some stateside bodyguard type work, stateside private security, did some overseas contracting, which is not nearly as cool as everybody thinks it is. And then I decided that, you know what, the money's really good, but there's no future in it. I don't really feel like I'm growing as a member of the private security community. So I decided to go into law enforcement, which was crazy because I grew up hating cops. I spent most of my early adult life not liking law enforcement. Became a police officer, worked for DOD, and then ended up in a training building. They decided that I was good at kind of like speaking to people. So they sent me to a few classes to basically be a subject matter instructor for certain things. And then I ended up taking over the entire program. And I was the in-service training officer for 38 sworn police officers. Full-time training, ran our range. I was also part of our SRT, which is like our version of SWAT. I was the sniper section leader and the deputy commander of the entire team. And about 2012, I decided to start Sage Dynamics. So the company, it really isn't that old. And I guess I could say I had a more interest in training on the citizen side than I did on the law enforcement side. I still offer law enforcement military classes, but it's not my main focus because there's a lot of really, really good instructors out there that only train law enforcement and military. I think the citizens should have access to the same degree of quality training as law enforcement and military. So that's been my main focus. Now, all the law enforcement military guys in the world can come to my citizen side classes. They're welcome to. But my main focus is always going to be on the citizen because I think they definitely get the short end of the stick when it comes to training.
Well, that's awesome. So you said you do military law enforcement type of classes, but like do you do the type of classes where they're separated at all? Like you'll have some only military LEO, or is it always?
Well, I actually have a mentor. I guess, I'll call him a mentor. We butt heads all the time because he says that there's some things I teach citizens that they have no business knowing, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Like, my thing is, like, I'm not going to teach you helicopter assaults. I'm not going to teach you explosive breaching, just because the average citizen is not going to come to me with a helicopter or explosives. If he has it and he legally possesses it, I'm like, hey, you want to take a class? But the average, that's just stuff that's not in the average citizen's lane. But team tactics and things like that, it's all in how you articulate the need for the skill, and it's always up to the student to tell me what he needs. When I see a student on the range having trouble with his grip or having trouble with his trigger control, he is telling me what he needs. It's my job to recognize what he's telling me. All these skills could potentially save someone's life. So I train from the most likely to the least likely. I will train you in what you're most likely to encounter, and then we'll work our way towards that least likely stuff. Like a citizen coming to me, a guy never been in the military, never been in law enforcement, he's got a plate carrier. I want to know why he's got it. I want to know what his mindset is, why he thinks he needs it, and then we'll work from there. I'm really big on, fighting how you dress, fighting for your lifestyle. If you work in, if you're a carpet cleaner or you work on a factory floor, there's absolutely no shame in that. You don't have to be a high-speed Tier 1 operator. But I want to train you based on your life and your lifestyle and your habits, and then we'll work towards that possible eventuality of you needing to throw on a plate carrier and get work done with a couple of team members.
So start with a gun first, then move to the plate carrier.
Well, not necessarily that. If you come to me and say, hey, I work private security, I'm like, okay, I need to address your specific needs. But if you're taking a rifle class from me and you show up with a plate carrier, I'm going to ask you why you have it. And I'm going to ask you how it fits into your self-defense plan. Most people are going to use a rifle for home defense on the citizen side. So I need you to explain to me what you plan on doing with that plate carrier. The most likely scenario, and let's be honest, for a home defense situation is you're awoken in the middle of the night and you have time to grab a firearm. You probably don't have time to get dressed, which is why I sleep with shorts on.
I thought you were gonna say plate carrier.
No, I haven't slept with a plate carrier on since it's been a while.
So I guess, and maybe you kind of summed it up there, but if you had a philosophy of, or maybe one thing a student's going to walk away with from taking a class with you, no matter what class it is, what would that be?
It's tough. I don't necessarily believe in the tier system. Like back when karate and taekwondo were real popular, you had a lot of McDojos. They set up belt factories. You'd come in, do so much time, and you'd start working your way up the belts. But you had to work your way up. My classes are set up in a tier. I start with the fundamental level. We go up to level 1. We go up to level 2. There is a level 3 that I don't advertise the classes because a lot of people don't reach that point because they just don't want to, or for any number of other reasons. The higher we go on the tier, the less students I have returning, just because they may have felt like, okay, I'm comfortable with what I got. I can practice these skills for proficiency. I'm good. I don't need to be doing seal slides and combat rolls. I don't teach either of those, but you know what I'm saying. I try to start everybody at the fundamental level. But if someone has a really good skill set and they come to me, showing me like this is my past experiences, I'll start them at level 1. I may start them at level 2. But the thing that bothers me the most is when somebody's like, I was in the Army. So was I. You need to start fundamental level. Trust me, brother. I had Army training. I know the quality of Army training, and I know the variance of Army training. If you were a cook in the Army, you didn't get the same training as an infantryman. And the infantryman does not really spend a lot of time working with handguns unless you're, in a specialized infantry unit. So starting at the fundamental level, sometimes people think that's like an insult to their ego, and I'm like, dude, there's only a few people doing fundamentals the way I do fundamentals. I don't teach you to shoot paper. I teach you to shoot people. I take a totally different approach to the way I do things. And I know, having gotten some of these people who initially had reservations through my fundamental level courses, they come out being like, I'm glad I started. So that's validation for me to say, like, I'm not just saying it. Like, people come out on the other end and they totally are like, yeah, you're right. This is where I needed to start because there's so many things I didn't even consider when it came into self-defense shooting.
Okay. So what classes do you offer, and are you based out of one area? Do you travel around?
I do travel. I'm based in Atlanta. Have a range here. I teach in Atlanta for live fire. I also do my simunitions here. But I can travel anywhere that there's a range that kind of meets my standards. Will allow me to train as realistically as possible. There's some particulars that I gotta have, but it's not really hard for a range to meet them. I need a really good backdrop. Hopefully allow fire in at least 3 directions, and I have to be allowed to do free movement on the range. I try to stay away from indoor ranges just because I don't like them. They're unrealistic. They're very sterile. I don't like sterile training environments because real life is not sterile. I want the range to be as close to the street as possible. I offer handgun, rifle, shotgun, which nobody ever takes, precision rifle, and then I have some skills-focused classes such as home defense, low-light handgun, low-light rifle, home defense, and a couple others.
And force on force?
Yeah, force on force is both handgun, rifle, and shotgun. I can do all 3 popular weapon systems. I can convert your own firearm for rifle and shotgun to fire ammunition so you can use your own gun, which is really cool. Unfortunately, I'm limited by Sims kit, so if you come to me with an AK, there's nothing I can do for you. But if you use the venerable AR-15 platform, as long as it's not a piston gun, I can convert it to fire the simulations round, and you can get some really good force-on-force training. Any pump-action shotgun, if you have a Glock 17, I can convert it. Otherwise, I will provide you with a Sims converted Glock 17. But the Sim stuff is very specific, and I would much rather spend my time training people with simunitions than I would live fire. Live fire is great, it's priceless, but at the end of the day, you're still just putting holes on paper. With simunitions, you actually get to get in an actual gunfight, and it makes it a little more realistic. It makes you rethink your training, rethink your practice, and take a different approach to things.
Well, let's jump into the force-on-force stuff here, but maybe something we should cover too before. Simunition can be used as a very generic term. Do you actually use simunitions? And then,
I use the name brand, the General Dynamics Simunitions FX system. That's the system I use. There's also air munitions and UTM, which are commonly referred to as simunitions. The official designation is non-lethal training ammunition, NLTA. Simunitions is one of many companies that makes them. I got simunitions certified when I still worked for DoD, so when I started the company, it was very easy for me, since I already had the certification, to start using sim systems on the private side. Had I not had that certification, I may have gone with UTM or Air Munitions or one of the other companies. But Sims just made sense. So all my equipment is actual Simunitions equipment.
Okay. So can you, maybe those aren't familiar with what we're going to be talking about or familiar with Simunitions, can you tell them exactly like what it is? So It's not
Well,
exactly shooting paintball,
no,
correct?
it's definitely not shooting paintball. I've used airsoft and paintball for training purposes when I didn't have access to sims when I was in law enforcement. Well, still in law enforcement when I was a law enforcement trainer. It does not have the same physio-psychological effect that Simunitions does. Nobody really knows why Sims does what it does. But there's something about the realism of the gun, the fact that it is a live weapon, it's just been converted to fire Simunitions. It's still the same gun, still operates the same way. It just shoots a silk-tipped paint bullet. That they do sting a little bit. The rifles actually sting quite a bit. The handguns aren't so bad, but you definitely know you did something wrong when you get hit with one. And then there's you got a collar to protect your throat. You have a helmet, hopefully providing, depending on which helmet manufacturer you go, good wide field vision. Those are our training artificialities. There's some safety gear that we have to wear. Other than that, I'm pretty unlimited in the kind of scenario I can put together. We have to understand that there are going to be some training artificialities in the name of safety, but other than that, I can make the true scenarios very, very, very realistic, which is something I strive to do. One of my favorite scenarios for the self-defense classes is I'll get you in your safety gear, have you carry the gun you would normally carry, your everyday carry gun, and then I will fill both of your hands with shopping bags because as men, especially, we're going to carry all the damn bags at one time. So I'm going to fill your hands full of shopping bags, and then I'm going to give you a destination, and you're going to go there. Now, obviously, something is going to happen. At least you think something's going to happen because you're like, hey, I'm here to train, so let's see what happens. It's sometimes not that clear cut. I don't run shootouts for the sake of running shootouts. You're going to be challenged you're going to be challenged in your verbals. I'm going to make you have a conversation with a guy who potentially wants to mug you. Or, depending on how you fall in the rotation of scenarios, the guy may be very obvious about the fact that he's going to mug you, and you have to respond to it accordingly. Not everything's going to be a shoot. Not everything's going to be a no-shoot. And, depending on the skill of the role player, you may get wound up pretty good in an argument and find yourself trying to make a decision on whether you should let this guy know you have a weapon, or maybe he's not going to take that level. So I try to make it as realistic as possible. 90% of the situations we get into the general public, I don't say 90% seriously because there's no way for me to know that statistic. I'm just using it as a figure of speech. We're not going to go to the gun a lot more often than we actually go to the gun.
Well, that stat sounded 100% accurate, just so you know.
Yeah.
So, kind of something we teased about earlier, because, like this JCW video and other videos.
Oh my God, what was that?
I know. The guy doesn't make it 25 seconds before muzzling his hand with a high point, no matter. But
and kind of okay, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, Andy's teaching center action relock, which I was just like, is this 1989 again? Are we still doing that? Are we still? Wait, no. Did I fall into a time machine? What year is this?
Google that. They'll tell you everything you know about it. But kind of going off this, and I added it here just a little bit ago because I thought it was maybe something important. For when we're talking about a force-on-force class, but there's emotions, there's stress. It's the most realistic situation we can go through in training in regards to a defensive type of style. Who teaches it? Is it almost important as what's being taught? I mean, if somebody just decides, hey, again, I'm just throwing this term out there. I was in the Army. I'm going to teach a force-on-force class. If you don't teach the correct things to a guy walking in, that could teach some really bad stuff, couldn't it?
The thing with force-on-force is it's going to go one of two ways. Either the instructor is going to give you some really solid, good physio-psychological advice, or you're going to end up just playing a game. I don't really consider there to be a gray area because the symptoms you're going to experience when your sympathetic nervous system activates, the instructor needs to be capable of telling you what those things are. You're going to tell. I'll ask you, like, how did you feel? What happened? I want you to articulate what happened to your senses. Was your hearing affected? Was your vision affected? Was your sight picture affected? Were you able to move? Did you feel like you were walking in quicksand? Like, I need to know all of these things that happened to you. And then I'm going to do my best to explain to you what they were, why they happened, and how you can combat them in your own personal practice. If an instructor just buys some Sims gear and throws people out there and just lets them get in a gunfight, is there really a lesson learned? To me, it just sounds like a more expensive way to play airsoft.
Yeah. So for someone that's considering these type of classes, obviously make sure that there's some sort of background. You don't want to just walk in and, again, like you said, play paintball or airsoft. Obviously,
Well,
they need to do some research on their instructor before walking into something like this.
yeah, yeah. The really good thing about simunitions and most NLTA systems is they are kind of cost prohibitive on my side. Like the equipment's expensive. So that keeps your average, I learned all this stuff on Call of Duty guys from getting into teaching it. There's a matter of you have to get a certification, you have to carry liability insurance, you have to be an actual legitimate firearms instructor to get involved in the NLTA game, which is good because then you don't have people who have no business teaching anything putting the system out there and saying that they're going to give people good training. On the instruction end, for every 1 minute of scenario, I probably put in 15 minutes worth of work creating the scenario. The majority of my scenarios are based on real events that either happen to me, people I know, or students I've had. I try to make things as realistic as possible, but I also understand that there's 100,000 variables that go into any self-defense situation. And I'm constantly striving to make sure the scenario is organic as possible because I don't want to put people on rails when I train them. So when you're looking for an instructor for force on force, because not everybody can come to Atlanta, and I'm not going to go to everybody just because there's just not enough time in the world for that. See what kind of background they have in providing that training to other people. Try to talk to people, go and see the forums, try to find somebody who's been through their training and ask the right kind of questions. Do you feel like this training prepared you for self-defense, or do you feel like you were just allowed to get into a gunfight with absolutely no context?
Okay. So how should, obviously, does a guy that's taken, one class at range time, should he be walking into a force on force class, or should, when if a person's progressing towards their goal of, taking much training as possible, when should the force on force training, be something that they can consider taking?
As soon as possible. I think once you have a basic understanding of the fundamentals of the firearm, once you're able to demonstrate the fundamentals and you're able to hit your target and you're able to shoot nice tight groups, you should get involved in some force on force training because that will let you know, it will dispel or validate the skills you already have. It will let you know areas that you need to work on in regards to what's going to happen in real life, and it'll show you how the gun works when your sympathetic nervous system is working against you. So as soon as possible. I wouldn't recommend someone who knows nothing about guns gets involved in an NLTA class. I think that you need to have a firm grasp of how the firearm works and how to shoot the firearm, and hopefully how to work from more realistic concealment and things of that nature. But as soon as possible would be my answer. Once you're good, go ahead and take an NLTA class and work from there.
Okay. So I might possibly be qualified having one class at range time then coming in, but that's another story. So when you talk about, again, you're talking about these situations, can you kind of give us maybe just one example of one that maybe a recent student did, or just kind of like, again, you talk about the situations of, I guess when someone goes through a situation, do they have any expectations of what could happen or might happen, or,
They can, because, and again, there is that training artificiality. They're in a class, they're wearing the safety gear, I've given them a simunitions gun. I keep all the students corralled, so to speak, or separated, or segregated, or whatever word you want to use, from where the scenario is going to take place. So they know something's going to happen, but I keep them far enough away they can't hear it, they can't see it. And I will use students as role players, but that student won't go through a scenario in which he acted as a role player, so he can't game it. So you're walking in completely unknown to every single scenario. I will give you, depending on the intricacy of the scenario, I'll brief you on what to expect. I'll be like, hey, you're going out here to the ATM. You got a buddy waiting for you in the parking lot. You're about to put the keys in your door to your own home. Those are the kind of things that I kind of give people right off that. I give them as much information as they need, but as little as possible, so they can't try to game it in their head, try to expect what they're going to get into. Some of my really good scenarios have come from students or people I've known. My vehicle defense class has some really good carjacking scenarios that came from students I've had. I had one student who he'd never taken training in his life. He felt like, he came from a gun family, came from a hunting family. He'd never been trained in self-defense shooting, but he figured, I know guns, so I'm good to go. And he almost lost his life because of that line of thinking. He just recently purchased a new holster, hadn't done any practice draws with it, had that effect. It was winter, so he's wearing a winter jacket. He wasn't used to drawing from concealment. He spent most of his shooting time drawing from, shirt tucked in on the range, no retention holster, good to go. And he ended up, luckily the guy happened to be a bad shot, and he was able to kind of put the car between him and the bad guy before he was able to get his gun out and defend his life. So that scenario is something that makes it into every single vehicle defense class in one way or another, because it's a great scenario. I think there's a lot of learning to be said from it.
Well, I'm glad you're. That had to be. That probably had to be kind of a powerful message. Hearing that of that, this is why we prepare, why we train, and why people like us pay to take classes, and why people like you teach classes. This has to be. At the end of the day, of hearing something like that, you got to feel like at least a little pretty good about yourself, saying, "Hey, I'm trying to help this guy to make sure if someone else gets in this situation, that what, they're going to be around too."
Yeah, I take training very seriously. It's a passion of mine. The second that I stop liking it, I'll stop doing it. I was lucky enough in coming up that I had some really good quality instructors. I had some bad ones too, but I had more good ones that kind of encouraged me and kind of helped me mold a more realistic approach to training and try to stay away from the dogma and sacred cows that the firearms industry has a habit of just bringing back up as soon as we beat them to death. I've been able to stay away from those, and I've always been focused on the why, and I think that's definitely benefited me and in turn benefits my students. Some information I consider to be more academic than useful. I can throw statistics at people all day long, but is that going to help you be a better shooter? I don't think so. It's good information for you to know on the education side, but I don't feel like I'm going to spend time on the range just assaulting you with statistics because that's academic information. If I tell you it takes 3,000 to 5,000 reps for you to project your draw, not only is that information wrong, but does it help you right then in the class?
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Unless you can do that much within one class.
Well, the thing, here's the difference between training and practice. Training is introduction to skills that you're either unfamiliar with or you've never received any professional instruction. Practice is building those skills to perfection. Practicing them correctly until you're proficient in doing them, until you've gone through all the levels of competence, and you can do them at an unconscious level. Not all skills, obviously, can be done at an unconscious level, but most of the firearms, general motor skills, can be done at an unconscious level. So practice is practicing correctly. You can't practice something you've never actually been taught how to do. And I think some people forget that.
Well, that also seems kind of similar of taking like a paper training class versus a class like this. Mm-hmm. And maybe in my mind that's a weird way to put it.
Yeah, there's some really good academic classes out there that factor into self-defense. There's a lot of really good medical classes that spend a lot of time on paper. There's a little bit of hands-on, but a lot of it is just learning how the body works. I'm getting ready to teach a class in May for the TTPOA with William Petty, which is basically it's a ballistics class on body and barriers. We're going to teach people how the bullets affect the body and how the bullets affect barriers. And I think what I know, because I'm teaching it, a lot of that class is informational. There's some hands-on, and we're going to shoot some ballistic gel, and we're going to shoot some refrigerators and some coffee pots and some TVs and a bunch of other common objects. But the majority of the information is going to be literally just academic. Like, here's how the body works, here's the best way to defeat it, here's where ideally you want to put bullets to incapacitate someone as quickly as possible.
Well,
I think that goes a step further than just giving people a target that has some critical zones on.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned William here, he'll actually be on the show here in probably a week or two.
Oh, awesome.
Doing
He's a great guy. Can't say enough about that dude.
No, he's awesome to talk to. We've had a good time chatting. I won't break the topic on the show, but it's gonna be something kind of special. But obviously, I've chatted with him just through Steve, Yeti, is how I met him. And again, too, all these guys said the best stuff about you. That you're straightforward, you're honest, and nowadays I know just from I'm an outsider looking in here, so it's nice to get this point of view from an instructor. But outside looking in, I just see all these people putting out these crazy videos that are training, and it's nice to see. Again, not that I've ever had any crazy weird fluff guys come on the show, anyways, but so straightforward, honest opinions about what and facts about here's what you need to do or here's what you need to do best prepared to save your life, and all this other stuff. Just you don't have to wear all ACU.
No. I would prefer you came to my class wearing what you normally wear. I teach usually from concealment. If I'm teaching a law enforcement class, I usually teach in a duty belt because most of my guys are going to be patrol level officers. Um, Cops are really good about usually training in what they wear on duty. Civilians, not so much. Citizens, I should say. They'll come to me every now and then. I get a leg rig, but what I usually see is guys prepared to train from whatever their holster is, but they've got it exposed. They got their shirt tucked in, because that's what a lot of training you see on YouTube. I don't know if I want to say a lot, but some training. Well, you know what? I'll go with a lot. A lot of training on YouTube has shown them is that's how classes go. That's not what I expect from my students. I want you to train from concealment. I'm going to treat you as an adult until you show me that you can't be safe. If you come to me, we're going to do a little bit of one-on-one time so I can kind of see where your mind's at and see where your comfort level is as far as training goes. And you might be the weak link as far as experience goes, and you'll set the tempo for the entire class. And I'll work with you one-on-one as much as possible to get you comfortable with, drawing from concealment, fighting from concealment, because that's how you're going to have to fight.
Yeah.
In a self-defense situation, you're going to be behind the power curve 9 times out of 10. You're going to be surprised. You're going to have very limited time to react to the threat. Muggers are pretty good about not making themselves known until it's time to collect your wallet. Carjackers are the same way because they work off of surprise. In my day job working in law enforcement, I have the ability to talk to these guys all the time, and I constantly grill them on this stuff. Not related to what they're arrested for, so I'm not violating their rights without Mirandizing them. But I want as much information as I can get about how they do their trade, how they work their craft. Because you know what? I think muggers are scumbags, but that's their job. So I want to know how they do their job, because that's going to better help me prepare people to shoot them in the face.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's. I think that's a great way to put it. Again, and we're totally getting off subject, but I love it. I think a lot of people.
I have a habit of doing that. I apologize.
No, I think, and again, what you're talking about exactly on YouTube is you see so many, we'll say, tactical people, and not necessarily even saying firearms instructors, but tactical people of I don't know, for me, maybe it's because I'm just a total nerd and a daydreamer. I daydream a lot about situations of where I'm at. Like, my biggest fear is always walking into a gas station robbery, and just being in there, like getting Gatorade or something, and a robbery happens. Like, I don't know if I daydream about this stuff all the time because I'm weird.
No, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we should always be what if. The problem we have is when we get into planning.
Yeah.
You should have a plan. However, you need to know that there's a lot of things in that plan that you have absolutely no control over. Recently, I was talking about. I happened to be reading an article, and it was just the article was on how this weapon is better than that weapon. Whatever, that's an argument we can beat to death. But a lot of the comments, guys were telling everybody their home defense plan, and I thought it was interesting because their plan presupposed so many things that are out of their control. You don't know when the home invasion is going to happen. You don't know where you're going to be during the home invasion. You don't know where your family members are going to be in the house during the home invasion. You don't know what time of day it's going to be. You don't know your location versus the location of your shotgun or whatever you're using. All of those things are out of your control, so your plan has to account for those things. And these guys were obviously in their mind, at least based on their comments, they had a plan based on everything being in a certain place when it happened, and that's just out of your control.
I'd see a lot of plans I see are a guy's going to come into my house, I'm going to shoot him. Like that's their plan. Like that's how it's going to go down. And again, maybe you can speak from experience of, again, being a police officer, probably doesn't generally go down that exact way.
Well, with home defense, is it a burglary or is it a home invasion? Burglaries are usually they think you're not home. Home invasions are they know you're home and they're coming in anyway. Two different types of criminals as far as mindset goes, in my experience. The burglar doesn't want confrontation. The home invasion guy actually plans for it because he needs to secure you in some way to finish whatever it is he's got in mind, whether it be kidnapping you and driving you to the ATM to make a withdrawal or what have you. The home invasion guy and the burglar are both going to try to hit at a time when you're at least aware, which ideally would be when you're asleep. So you're going to have access to your firearm, hopefully, if you hear them breaking your home. If you hear them breaking your home. Obviously, if you have an alarm system, that's going to go off, so that's going to alert you. That's great. But if you live alone versus if you have kids, that changes your plan. If you have kids, you have to go to your kids. If you live alone, there's no reason to leave your bedroom. Just wait. Set up a sight picture ambush unless you live in one of the less free states that forces you to try to retreat. Um, there's just so many possible variables that your plan needs to be as loose as possible. It needs to account for things you can't control. What do you do if the guy's entry point is your bedroom window, and your wife is between you and the bad guy? Have you talked to her about that?
Yeah.
Little
No.
things.
The way I've heard is you have a plan of A, B, and C, and then you realize that A, B, and C aren't going to work. So you got to have D through Z on plans. Maybe I'm breaking down a little more simplistic.
No, but you're definitely on the right track, and then you have to factor in like I said, have you gone over your plan with your kids? Are your kids old enough to understand? Have you gone over the plan with your wife? Is your wife behind your planning? Family planning is probably one of the things that gets left out the most training. Is all these alpha studs come to my classes and they get the training and they perform really well, and I see them improve throughout the class goes. But then they may go home and not talk about any of this stuff with their wife, and I'm really hoping they are, but I have no control over that. I tell them, try to beat in their heads like family planning, family planning, family planning. But I have no control over if they went home and talked to the wife. And what if their wife is not a gun person, doesn't want to be involved, doesn't care? I have no control over that. So I really hope when these guys are putting together their what ifs that they're accounting for the variables they can control and trying to make that work in light of the variables that they have absolutely no control over.
No, you're 100% right. And do your kids know the difference between an alarm going off and a smoke alarm? That's another thing we've talked about too. So we're gonna have to have you come back on now, and we're gonna talk some more about specifically family planning.
I apologize.
Yeah, no. I mean it hits home for me, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there too. Again, I'm a couple kids away from having a tribe and opening a casino. So it is something that is very important to me. But I'm going to drag us back to Force on Force here, and then we'll wrap it up here, but definitely have to get you back on. But and something you kind of hit on there too when we went away is the training versus practice. So when somebody takes a Force on Force class, or any other type of class, a lot of this should be okay, here's how you can train, here's things that you can work on. So from a Force on Force class, if I say that correctly, when they walk away, what are repeatable things from that class they can learn, or is it more mindset? Is it more what's something that's repeatable from that?
A lot of it is stress inoculation. It tells you as close as possible what your body's going to do in an actual Force on Force situation. When you actually get in a real life self-defense situation, it's not 100% the same, but it's as close as we can get it with existing training technology, and it's really, really close. I can tell you from experience that it's really, really close. That's going to tell you how your body's going to act, and it's going to give you areas that you need to improve on. If you're 30, 40 pounds overweight, the simulations class is going to let you know that that's going to hurt you. And I'm not talking about running and jumping and diving and rolling and doing backflips or anything like that, but it is a small frame of moving 4 or 5 feet explosively as fast as possible. Your fitness is going to affect your ability to do that quickly. Bullets move pretty quick. Simunitions moves a little bit slower, but it still moves fast enough that you can't get away from it. So you're not going to outrun a bullet. So I'm not trying to teach people that, but I need to teach people to move. I need to teach people to be prepared to explosively move to cover or explosively move away from the bad guy if he's got a knife. You got to be physically fit for that. So I think one of the lessons people pick up is what's important on the gun, how their SNS affects their ability to shoot using their sights or shoot using correct range techniques, static shooting techniques, proper stance, and things of that nature. And their physical fitness is always something they bring up, like, hey, man, I need to get back to the gym. Yes, you do.
I'm right there. I'm saying me too.
I've been there myself. When I talk to people about physical fitness, they kind of get this, well, you're in shape. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't start out that way, man. I put the work in. I'm in the gym 5 days a week. I make the time. I have 2 full-time jobs. I work full-time law enforcement, full-time on Sage Dynamics. So I know what it's like to have to make time, and I know how important time is. We don't get our time back. If I give you an hour of my time, I'm never going to get that hour back. But my personal well-being and my self-defense and the self-defense of my loved ones is worth me putting in a little bit of time to make sure that I'm capable of doing that. I don't expect everybody to be a Navy SEAL, but I expect everybody to have the physical ability to protect themselves as best as they are able. And I think that, most of the time we make more excuses than we have actual legitimate reasons not to do some of these things. Fitness is part of firearms. Just accept it. You can't separate the two. So you definitely have to factor that in. And I think the force on force training really drives that point home. Some people may not really, they may look at it kind of as a theory until I get their heart rate up. And then they're like, you know what? I should probably get on a treadmill.
No, I'm right there. Trust me, I need to. And actually, 3 episodes ago, Jeff Bluvman challenged me to get a little more physically fit. So it's something I'll be working on here, hopefully. But no, I agree with you 100%. Is having, well, and again, we'll go into a little more, but physically fitness, having a ground game, having some wrestling type ability could be extremely important. But again, all this stuff we're talking about, whether it be force on force, running, moving, shooting, reflexes, all goes back to fitness, kind of the core of your body.
Yeah. Your performance is going to be improved the better physical condition you're in, definitely. And it's not just physical movement. If you have a really good, strong core, it's going to help you prevent fatigue longer when you're on the gun. It's going to help you control the gun better, more precise. And it's also going to prevent you from possibly injuring yourself or others when you do fatigue and you start to lose your ability for proper muzzle control because you ran out of gas.
Yeah,
I see that a lot. I see that a lot.
Muzzle control is very important.
Well, when you start running out of gas, when you start to get to that hypervigilant stage, your heart rate's at 170. Your heart rate is not the engine. I don't want anybody to think that. Your heart rate is the speedometer. The more stress inoculated you are, the lower your heart rate's going to be under stress. Basically, meaning if my heart rate's lower, all things being what they should be, I'm going to be able to perform better, no matter the stress level. And my physical fitness is going to help bring that heart rate down a little lower. The lower our heart rate is, objectively, the better we can perform. I think everybody can agree if your heart rate's 200 beats per minute, you won't perform as well as if your heart rate was 160. Granted, you can inoculate yourself to perform really well at 200 beats per minute, but most people don't get up that high. They shouldn't. And if they do, it's probably because they're hyperventilating and things are about to go to code black or whatever you want to call it. Once you get yourself comfortable with that and you're physically conditioned to handle that, you're not going to experience performance failure. If you're hypervigilant and you're out of gas, you may start running your hand on the trigger. You may have bad reflexes. You may have sluggish reflexes. You may see things that aren't there. And you may very well shoot yourself or someone who doesn't deserve to be shot. My active shooter class, I see it a lot. Well, I won't say a lot. I've seen it. I've seen students get hypervigilant just based on stress alone and shoot the wrong person.
Wow. So your active shooter class, you do a sim munitions class of that. That has to be kind of stressful. I'm assuming this again. I'm just throwing it out there. Is for an active shooter, I'm assuming you're talking about like a shopping mall or whatever.
Shopping mall, school, office. I try to make the setting as generic as possible, but it's ideally our active shooters they can happen anywhere, but they're gonna happen in a place ideally that's a gun-free zone. That's what the shooter wants, or it's gonna happen in a place where there's just a lot of soft targets, like a mall or a school or an office building. That's where they commonly are. Lots of people. And it's usually going to be non-access controlled. So we've seen sometimes it does happen in an access controlled building because the weakest link in any security system is the human being. But yeah, I train them I do a school scenario. I have an office building scenario, and sometimes I shape the scenario based on the student. If I have a student who works in a church, that's their job. I've had a church security guy go through one of my classes, and I even had a zookeeper go through one of my classes. He was the only armed security at the zoo. What if the active shooter happened at the zoo? He wanted to factor that into his training, so I can tailor the scenarios as much as I can based on the training environment to that student. Because everybody goes through their own unique scenarios. So if a student comes to me and says, hey, man, I work in a high-rise office building, I have to factor that into his scenarios because realistically, he's not 2 floors from the street. He may be 30 floors from the street, so I have to factor that into the scenario creation. But yeah, they get running, screaming, freaking out people. They might have a scenario where they're standing in line to go to a movie, and the guy comes up and just starts shooting people in line.
Wow. That would have to be intense, to say the least.
Yeah. It definitely will open the eyes of an open carry guy. Just saying.
That's awesome. So, kind of one more thing on force, and then we'll wrap it up, and then we're gonna hit some live questions here because we have some. So when it comes to force on force training, and we've talked about all these scenarios and all this fantastic training that could be done, is a force on force situation that's a no shoot just as important or more important than a shoot type of situation?
More important, absolutely more important. Because like I said, you're gonna get into more no shoots than you do shoots. If a guy's harassing you for money, at what point do you go to the gun? At what point can you go to the gun? At what point should you go to the gun? You have no legal protection from a self-defense situation in which you yourself necessitate the need for lethal force. If you work your way into a confrontation and you have to use your gun, that's on you, and the law is not going to look favorably upon you. As a gun carrier, we have to swallow our pride a lot. We can't get into the fistfights because it may go to the gun. And then how do we explain having to shoot this guy? We necessitated the need for the use of lethal force. We can't do that. The use of lethal force is for defense against somebody exhibiting or threatening lethal force against you. So the no-shoot drills, I always try to stress those more than the shoot scenarios. Because, one, they're more likely, and two, you really got to kind of have the ability to use your verbals and talk your way out of situations if possible.
Well, and I don't think there's a large sum of people out there, but obviously working in a gun store is just something you run across. A lot of these people that are walking around looking to use their firearm. Now, I'm not saying that they're looking to walk up and shoot somebody. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if something starts escalating, they're just going to go to, they're going to go from point A to point B like that. And there's not, again, like we talked about verbal skills or, and that's something that, like the guy in Michigan that just shot the lady through his door. That was pounding on his door. There's a couple more I can't think off the top of my head, but
I know what you're talking about, and I'd be willing to bet a lot of these people have never had formal training.
I would probably agree with that as well.
Or if they had formal training, their instructor did them a huge disservice and did not talk about the realities of self-defense.
Yes, but the kind of what we're talking about here with the force on force, this again gives you a little bit of insight into a situation like that and might prepare you.
Yeah, I will like for the force fundamentals class. You're going to go through some focus drills, and you're going to go through some scenarios. I will put you in a scenario that's a very clear no shoot. You'll also maybe get one or two scenarios that are kind of vague. They can go either way based on how the conversation goes, and then I'll put you in one or two scenarios where it's a definite shoot situation. But you're definitely I'm going to drive it home. When I think you're amped up and ready to go to the gun, I'm going to throw a scenario at you where you should not legally ever go to the gun, even let them know that a gun exists. And I've been fortunate that I've had very few students do the wrong thing. It does happen, but it's really, really rare, which is good because I think I do a good job of prepping everybody before the scenarios begin and kind of really driving home the point that like not every situation is going to be a shoot situation.
Yeah. To quote Keith from MDFI is if you carry around a hammer and that's all you carry, then every problem looks like a nail.
Yeah, very true.
And that's something that it sounds like from these classes that you can start to sift through of maybe non-verbal skills of what you need to work on or more situational awareness. I'm just throwing out stuff there, but it obviously gives you a place when you walk away of things you can work on.
Yep.
But I'm going to start wrapping it up here, but I do want to address a few live questions we have here.
Okay. What do we
got? We have one from our buddies over at High Capacity TV. I'm assuming it's Mr. Derp.
Oh, yeah.
Who does Aaron train under most often? A legitimate question, surprisingly.
I've trained, most recently I trained under Paul Van Dunk of Pace Performance. Paul is a very functional performance-based instructor. That's why he has performance in his name. Very technical on the gun. I got a lot out of his class, a lot of things that I didn't look at, and I'm self-defense focused. So it was a treat for me to train under Paul. I would take any class Paul was willing to offer. He's a great instructor. I get a lot of training through my job, so I stay current in the latest and greatest military / paramilitary / law enforcement stuff. And I've got a wish list of instructors I'd like to train under. So I'll be pursuing that as time is made available.
Okay. Mr. Brandonette, if I'm saying that right. For the simunitions, is it just semi-auto? Or no, I'm saying I don't know if he's asking talking about simunitions here, so maybe we'll do both. If somebody's taking a class with you, we'll say it's handgun one or simunitions. Is it semi-auto only, or can they bring a revolver?
I think I can do 38 357 for simunitions. I'll have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure I can because simunitions started in the revolver era. So I think that's definitely doable. I'd have to check on if I need to get kits or not, but I think the rounds will work, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. For any live training class, I'm assuming you probably don't recommend bringing a revolver.
If you train with a revolver, like I will take time out of the course to address your specific needs.
Okay.
That's not an issue at all. I don't discourage people from using revolvers if that's what they're comfortable with. I may give you some pros and cons of the weapon that you've probably already thought of. But yeah, if you got a revolver, come to the class. Like, it's not an issue.
Okay. Well, that's all the questions we had there.
Cool.
So I'm gonna wrap it up here. But again, Sage Dynamics. Where should they find you at? Where can they go to find more information on classes? Do you have your 2015 schedule?
No, my 2015 calendar is still in the works. I've got a couple dates. I'm looking at possibly Virginia class in January before SHOT Show, and then hopefully Louisiana in February. March is still open. I might be doing a night vision class here in Atlanta. I haven't nailed it down. I've got a couple dates, but I don't want to release it until I've got all.
Okay.
You can find me at sagedynamics.org. The calendar will be linked to there. It'll also be posted on the Facebook page in the events section, facebook.com/SageDynamics, YouTube /SageDynamics, Instagram @SageDynamics, Twitter @SageDynamics. I think that's everything.
Well, they got to make sure they find you on Instagram, no matter what.
Just Google Sage Dynamics, and you should find it.
It's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there. But again, guys, I've had the fortunate opportunity to chat with him a few times before the show. Completely awesome guy. Just, again, straightforward, honest, and a guy that can be pretty funny, too, that looks like a hell of a Bane as well. So, again, you can go find that out. Go find that out on Instagram. Again, just a really awesome guy that offers, he has one of those really unique perspectives and a way of sharing information in his stories. So thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great. We got to get you to class as soon as possible.
I will do my best. So, again, thanks for coming on. You guys, be sure to go check out Sage Dynamics. Please do. Again, Aaron is a fantastic guy. Also, please go check out the Reloading podcast here on the Firearms Radio Network as well. Mike actually lives near me, and we'll be doing some collaboration stuff here shortly. But go on iTunes or firearmsradio.tv. Go find the Reloading podcast. There's a link on our site and show notes as well to go check it out. So do that. Also, we want your feedback here at Practically Tactical, so please send us any compliments, feedback, guest suggestions, or if you have an after-action report from a Sage Dynamics class, send it to us. We would love to post that up on our Facebook webpage and all that stuff. Send it to nick@firearmsradio.tv. Also, please give us a review on iTunes. Check out Practically Tactical on Target as well. We just released a new episode with an interview with Chad from Sweaty Muddy Bloody. So find us on Facebook. Find Sage Dynamics on Facebook. Aaron, you're like a mentor to everybody here today. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing some info with us.
Yeah, it was great. I was glad to be here.
So as always, guys and gals, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening, as we greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys next week for another episode of Practically Tactical.